President's Homeland Security Secretary tells us immigrants in the DACA program need to follow the law. Kirstjen Nielsen testifies this morning at the Senate Judiciary Committee. She was in the Oval Office during last week's impassioned White House meeting on DACA. We asked Secretary Nielsen about that meeting and the president's views on immigration. The president made a broad characterization when he talked about people who came from Haiti and African countries versus people from Norway. So why is he making broad characterizations about people who come from those countries when you're saying U.S. policy is trying to move away from broad characterizations and move towards people?
I think the context of that conversation, there was so much covered in that meeting, but part of the conversation was really focused on this merit-based concept. So he had just met with the Prime Minister of Norway, was very impressed with what she told him about the successes that Norway has experienced. So he was just using that as an example of a place that accepts immigrants in part based on merit.
Let me ask you about your testimony on Tuesday. Senator Durbin, who was in this Oval Office meeting about which there has been so much discussion, is going to be there. What if he asks you whether you agree with his representation of the meeting?
I have no problem repeating what I've said. I just don't. That's not a word that I remember being used. It was very impassioned. People on all sides feel very strongly about this issue, frankly, as well as they should. There were a lot of conversations happening at the same time. That's not a particular phrase that I heard.
Let me ask you about the deferred action for childhood arrivals. There's a chance that that might not get worked out based on the way things seem to be going.
I hope it will.
Congress. If it's not, what does the Immigration, Customs and Enforcement Agency do with these kids who are here?
It's not going to be a priority of the Immigration and Customs Enforcement to prioritize their removal. I've said that before. That's not the policy of DHS.
So if this doesn't get worked out, and I am a dreamer, the way I'm supposed to read what you just said is this is not going to be a priority of ICE.
If you are a DACA that's compliant with your registration, meaning you haven't committed a crime, and you in fact are registered, you're not priority of enforcement for ICE should the program end.
And is that in perpetuity?
That would be in perpetuity, but of course that means you can't commit a crime.
Sure.
And we will enforce the law.
In our next hour, Secretary Nielsen reveals highlights of a new report showing who is being charged with terrorism and where they come from. That's ahead on CBS This Morning.
I go through the Black Belt in the South. When I'm in Atlanta, black churches in Newark. They're concerned about jihadist Islamic terrorism. We watched the Twin Towers from Newark go down. But since 9/11, 85 violent incidents, 73% were with people that hold bigoted, hateful ideas about minorities. 1 American killed in Charleston, Virginia, and dozens injured. 9 Americans killed in a church shooting in Charleston, South Carolina by a white supremacist. An American killed and another wounded in Kansas after a white supremacist targeted them for their ethnicity, saying, "Get out of my country." 6 Americans killed and 4 others wounded in Wisconsin, where white supremacists targeted individuals for their religion. The commander-in-chief, in an Oval Office meeting, referring to people from African countries and Haitian.
It's kind of shocking to know that it was here. Alonze Thornton says his grandmother lives in the same building where this shocking video was broadcast on Facebook Live Tuesday.
This right here, he represents Trump.
Showing a white teenage victim with mental health issues being abused by 4 black individuals.
Actually hearing about it word of mouth that it was in the area and actually coming here today knowing that it was here it's appalling.
The suspects face a slew of charges, including aggravated kidnapping, aggravated battery with a deadly weapon, and hate crime. The judge denied the suspects bond Friday and scolded them in open court, saying, "I'm wondering where was the sense of decency that each of you should have had."
I do want to say,
Scolded them in open court, saying, "I'm wondering where was the sense of decency that each of you should have had."
I do want to say that.
Sorry to the family.
Sorry this happened to the family.
One family member of the 2 female suspects, who are sisters, apologized outside court. Inside, the suspects showing no emotion, even when prosecutors described their alleged every move in open court. From suspect Jordan Hill picking up the victim at this McDonald's in a Chicago northwest suburb on New Year's Eve, to Hill allegedly beating the victim, even asked for ransom.
The defendant Hill communicates with the victim's mother and demands $300 ransom in exchange for getting her son back.
When a neighbor called police, that's when prosecutors say the victim got a window of time to escape. Neighbors tell us that this is the house where the abuse happened. They also point out that on the same night, there was a separate fight. The blood from that fight still remains. A tough neighborhood in a city that is no stranger to violence. And now, a call for justice for a teen who police say is still traumatized by the torture he endured. As for the victim, I spoke to the family spokesperson, and he tells me that the victim is with his family and they're asking for privacy and prayers. Rosa Flores, CNN, Chicago.
Put a whole patch out of this boy.
Why you do that?
Ain't no blood on the blade. You fuck.
Yo, yeah, grabbing that nigga. Fuck, cut him off.
Oh, shit, boy.
Damn, you cut it.
Put a whole patch out of this boy.
Why you do that?
Ain't no blood on the blade. You fuck.
Yo, you get
Donald Trump.
Mr. Chairman, I'm grateful to be on this committee. I'm more than ever today happy I am here.